Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with a very special guest, a returning guest, Timothy Draper, well-renowned. You've heard his name. He's a famous guy. He's on the cutting edge of research, AI. He understands the economy, and he's got some bullish predictions as to what to expect for Bitcoin. And we love Bitcoin here at Crush the Street. Timothy Draper of timothydraper.com. Timothy, thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Kenneth. This is going to be fun.
Well, let's start off with the economy. We've seen trillions of dollars pumped into the system, $23.4 trillion annualized by the Fed. If you were to just try to analyze what is going on around us, what do you make of this? Trillions of dollars, the economy not functioning, riots everywhere, and stocks returning to all-time highs.
Yeah, I think this may have been the worst, and it went all the way around the world, political policy decision in the history of the world. It's playing out that way. The death toll on COVID is falling very drastically, very quickly. And so it's starting to look like this was, maybe a bad flu season, and they'll never admit it, but that's sort of the way it worked. And by shutting down the economy, big parts of the economy for 4 months, that had huge detrimental effect. The cracks that were put into the world economy might take years to recover from, and they're pumping in 9 trillion, or I guess 23 trillion if you annualize it, to try to make it feel like nothing happened. Well, a lot happened, and now as an investor, you got to start looking at this in a new way. Well, people never trusted the Argentinian peso, and because the government just kept printing them and whatever. The Nigerian naira, the government was stealing money or whatever. The naira fell by 50% at one point. The Venezuelan bolivar, that currency fell like crazy at an incredible rate because they just had bad leadership. And now. And everybody said, well, that's okay. Well, the dollar, everything's fine with the dollar. Well, all of a sudden, we just printed 9 trillion of them. And that dilutes the value of the dollar by about 20 to 30%, which makes me feel that, those dollars we're holding in the bank accounts are probably not doing us much of a service. And so now what do you do? Where do you put your money? Well, what's really interesting about COVID is being locked in place has made it so that people, the early adopters were all on board, but people now are starting to experiment with Bitcoin wallets, and they're going, oh my gosh, I can hold my money right here. I don't have to pay 2.5% to 4% every time I swipe my credit card to the banks. I own my money. I actually can move it anywhere in the world. It's more convenient. I can just take my phone and I can send Bitcoin to anyone, anywhere in the world. If I wanted to send you money right now, sending Bitcoin would be a snap. Sending dollars, I would have to go to the bank. I'd have to wire the money. It's complicated, expensive. Or send you a check. What's that about? Or maybe you got Square and I swipe a credit card. I mean, Bitcoin's much easier now. And so suddenly this small group of enthusiasts that were the Bitcoin supporters has grown and grown and grown and grown. And Bitcoin is starting to really become proliferate around the world as an alternative to these political currencies that now everyone realizes that no one can trust, because if even the U.S. government decides they're just going to print 9 trillion of them willy-nilly, you really want a currency that is stable. And so either you get behind Bitcoin, where you know there are no more than 21 million of them that will ever be used, or you get behind something like Tezos, where the owners of the coins, every person who has a coin actually ends up voting for whether that coin gets, whether they print more or whatever they do with it. The one thing's for sure, we are no longer trusting our political currency. And so the banks are freaking out because they're seeing all these people take their money out of the bank and putting it into a Bitcoin wallet. And I know this just recently happened to me because I said, yeah, I'd like to move some money, some of my fiat currency into Bitcoin. And the banker said, you're going to move it to Bitcoin? And they were panicked because they realized that it's a big outflow, and they're no longer able to like control your money. And all of a sudden you've got control over your own money, and that is something they don't really want to happen. And so you're seeing the banks say things like, oh, pay no attention to Bitcoin. It's not an asset, doesn't count, whatever. That's what Goldman Sachs did, because they're seeing lots and lots of people like me take their money out of the banks and put that money into Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies because they are more trustworthy. And so that's kind of where the future goes for currency. If you're talking about where to invest your money, boy, after this COVID thing, there are a lot of really interesting things happening. The public stock market's gone up like this because people are saying they're taking their dollars and they're saying these are hot potatoes. I gotta move them because they're going to decrease in value. So let me move them into the stock market. Well, the stock market valuations are crazy high, and in the public markets. And so, are you going to make money at that? I don't know. And then the bonds pay almost nothing, and the treasuries and all that, they pay almost peanuts. So where are you going to put your money? Are you going to put it into real estate? Real estate right now, you don't know if commercial real estate has a future at all. If like half the people who've been trapped at home in COVID are saying, I would rather stay home, then the value of commercial real estate is probably going to drop seriously. And then who knows whether the home real estate goes up, probably not in the cities because people are feeling like they can't operate in the cities. So does it go up in the suburbs? What happens? So those are difficult decisions to make. So we look and we say, okay, I'm always thinking 5, 10, 15, 20 years out. What happens 5, 10, 15, 20 years out? We don't know, but entrepreneurs drive those changes. And so the way I look at it is I'm saying I will continue to invest in entrepreneurs because they will lead us to this new world. I mean, and what a great time to start a business. 41 million Americans are out of work. 400 million around the world are out of work. I can pick anybody I want to come join me on my little startup. And that wasn't the case 4 or 5 months ago. I mean, Google would snap those people up like crazy. But now Google's had these layoffs, and so have all these other companies. And so all those good people are available for these startups to start businesses. And the startups just have to put a good vision out there and say, like Elon does, we're going to Mars. And then great things start to happen, like that rocket he launched. And he put 2 people already in the space station. Next stop, the moon. Next stop, Mars. We're there. We're going to be there. So I'm a believer in these entrepreneurs who have big visions and big opportunities, and I think it's really interesting. Early stage venture capital, like what we do, seems to be the best place to be. Late stage venture capital, they're still paying crazy prices because the stock market's going up so high. Early stage, we're actually, in fact, you're paying less because the Series A company starts panicking, and because of COVID, not knowing the uncertainty, and so they were willing to take lower prices. Anyway, it's a good thing to support. We'll get those 41 million people back to work over this 5 to 10 year period. So in the meantime, we got real troubles, and that's why riots are happening. That's why you got well, that's one of the reasons. There was a trigger that started this whole thing, but the thing that's added fuel to the fire is really that if you've got 41 million people in the US unemployed and all the 20-year-olds are not in college, it's a pressure cooker. You're waiting for something, to blow this lid up. And so I think we've got this is going to be a very difficult 3 or 4 years recovering from the bad policy decisions that have been made over these last 3 months.
Tim, you've already touched on Bitcoin, and I don't like to, corner people into predictions. And, you mentioned that Bitcoin would get to $250,000 by the end of 2022 or 2023. And honestly, I'm biased towards Bitcoin, and I'd be happy if you're half right or a quarter right. But just kind of follow up on that. What are and you mentioned it, what's going to backfill the valuations for Bitcoin? Is just general adoption or a real response to what is going on in the market?
Well, the reason I made this prediction a couple of years ago, after the prediction, the first one came to fruition, where I said Bitcoin's going to hit 10,000 by the end of 2017. Okay, so in 2014, I made the prediction that Bitcoin would hit 10,000 at the end of 2017, and it hit it right on the number, almost exactly 3 years later after my prediction. And that was for a variety of different reasons. Then people were saying, hey, well, what's your prediction for the future? And I said, well, I don't have one for like 6 months out or a year out or even 2 years out, but I know 4 years out, like 2022 or the beginning of 2023, Bitcoin will be proliferated everywhere. And right now there's $90 trillion worth of currency out there. And 250,000 it means that Bitcoin would have like a 5 to 10% market share. That seems to me to be very likely to occur. And there are only 21 million of them. And so buying a piece of a Bitcoin is probably a worthwhile strategy for somebody. I mean, certainly you don't want to hold it in Argentinian pesos or bolivars from Venezuela or the Nigerian naira. You probably don't want to hold those, but you probably don't want to hold dollars either.
Right.
And this is a currency that is stable, global, transparent, completely open. It can be used across border. You can, if you're a Syrian and you've got a bunch of Syrian money, you get exiled to Greece, you're stuck and you have no money. But if you have Bitcoin and you're in Syria and they send you as a refugee to Greece, you can pull down your Bitcoin and start your life and get going.
Love it.
I think the governments of the world are it's interesting because the world opened up with the internet. All of a sudden, the world economy was growing. Everybody was better off. We were all living better lives than we did. In general, the world is much wealthier, much happier, much healthier, and than they ever were, better educated than they ever were before because of the internet. Well, now we have technologies that are opening the world up even more, where transactions and currencies can be global. Well, that means that we're moving toward a very global world, and to some tribalists, some governments who are still trying to live in the past, live in tribalism where it's like nationalistic or whatever, they are threatened by this new world. We know this world to be a much more peaceful, loving, wealthy, healthy society, but people who kind of are saying, wait a second, I like having my tribe because I'm in control of this tribe, and I can tell them to put on a mask and stay in place and do all this stuff. Well, those tribalists are fighting this globalism, and that's going to be there's going to be some tension there for a while. But eventually all technology wins all the wars. So get on board, become a part of this new world. This is the new world. Get on board, be a part of it, get going. If you're a government, think in terms of a global opportunity where you can provide governance and do a better job than people in other countries, and then you can actually have a larger government, just the way you have a larger business if the business does a better job of providing quality services to their customers.
Good word, yeah. Tim, I want to circle back to the economy a little bit, but preface that with what we saw in May with oil. The oil futures going negative, and producers having to pay 40 cents a gallon to take this oil off the hands. Obviously, the economy starting to open up, and largely due to all that money that was printed into the system. It really seemed like the oil market was a reflection of an opportunity to reflect the real economy. There's not that many opportunities to see that in our world today with so much intervention. So what do you make of oil and just the general fundamental economy?
Yeah, I think oil, part of it was temporary where, wow, you're producing all this oil and you got a glut, and take it off my hands. I got more coming, and I got to do something with it. And that was, again, the failed policies of these governments of the world. They've made huge mistakes. And that's why the economy came to a crushing halt. Well, the positive side of the COVID lockdown was people were trapped in place. And a lot of people feel like, hey, I kind of like working from home. I'm more productive. Some of them become more productive. But I think they eventually feel that isolation. They got to get back to their team. But what that means is that some of that was temporary. But I believe that some of it is permanent, or at least very long term. I think the use of oil, at least with current forms of transportation, is going to be in a glut situation for quite a while. And until we start wearing jetpacks and start flying from place to place, which will be good uses of oil, we are going to be in this glut situation because we were producing to a global economy that had huge traffic, lots of commuters, lots of people going from one place to another to get together, conferences, that sort of thing. It's going to take a while for those things to come back. And if you ask most of these people, or half of the people that I have asked, have said, I like working from home. The other half are saying, I need people.
Right. Well, a lot of times it's people with little kids running around. They're going, hey, I can't do this. So
get out of here.
Tim, you mentioned something that reminded me of just where the world is headed. And you mentioned jetpacks. We could have a whole interview on this. But just ending this conversation here with the world advancing, AI, driverless cars, efficiencies. I mean, you look at almost every major metroplex in the US, it's congested, it's crowded. I mean, how big of a deal is AI and transportation going to be going forward here? And I mean, does that change the real estate market if all of a sudden now you don't have to worry about traffic and, do the home prices all of a sudden just rapidly change? Again, this is a topic that we could spend 30 minutes on or an
Yeah.
hour, but it's something I want to get your opinion on.
Yeah, I think we're going to have less traffic. I think people are going to be employers are going to be very flexible about people working from home. And I think that's going to be a little bit of a change agent. I think people will probably want to move a little bit out of the cities, although eventually they're going to want to move back in because the dynamism and the excitement and will overrule their germophobia, and eventually people will be back to hugging and kissing, which I think should start now. And I think that that does mean that there will be less traffic, less congestion. We will have more of a balanced life. Our lives may be more balanced. So there may be some real positives that come from this. I think the ecology is probably improved from this because we're not traveling nearly as much. On the other hand, I think that residential real estate may increase in value and commercial real estate may decrease in value temporarily, and eventually that will find its a similar feel. Because I do think that people do like getting together, and I think that they like working together, and a Zoom call is nice, but it's not nearly as exciting. And so I think we're going to eventually get back to the future. We'll get, but I think we're going to have some good things that come of this. I mean, think of all those great entrepreneurs who have been stuck in place, and they've been thinking about what's the future of, you name it, transportation, travel. What's the future of healthcare? I mean, a lot of people just handled their healthcare during these 4 months just through Zoom calls. Maybe that turns out to be a big part of the future of healthcare. What's the future of and healthcare already? COVID proved that the dry lab turns out to be much more effective than the wet lab in a crisis, because the dry lab, that the computational biochemistry, can be a super predictor and can run many more samples of predictions than can, and so that the world of healthcare is really going digital. I think education, I think people are looking and realizing the university system has no clothes. They're looking and they're going, God, what are all these tenured professors doing? If I'm getting more of an education through Zoom calls than I did ever while I was, goofing around in college. And so colleges may take on new forms. I think finance is taking on a new form, and that's going to go Bitcoin. I think that insurance is going to be changed by artificial intelligence. I think that's going to be a whole new way of thinking of how insurance will work. I think an insurance company could improve on the current service that people are getting just by incorporating all artificial intelligence and surveillance. Because, it's like, yeah, we can see from here that your house burned down. We don't need to send out a claims reporter or whatever. And so we can get you your money right away. And boy, will people appreciate that. So that kind of an insurance company could wipe out the entire industry. And then in real estate, I think it's going to be tokenized, so people can buy I can buy a piece of your house, you buy a piece of my house. We can buy a piece of some commercial real estate through tokens, and then the ownership of that, the title, will be kept on the blockchain, and I think that's going to be a big change. Right now, if you want to go find your title it'll be on microfiche or it's going to be really hard to find. Go try to find the title to a house right now. It will take you all day to figure out who owns what and where the property line is and all that stuff. It would take you an entire day. And if all those titles are built onto the blockchain, it's going to be pretty simple to figure out who owns what. And eventually that's going to be all over the world. So I think every major industry in the world is about to go through a huge transformation. And I think venture capital and at Draper Associates, we're saying, hey, wow, it's like the best time in the history of the world to be an investor in venture capital. And we have this enormous deal flow that we've worked on over all these years. And that I believe is going to really benefit us.
Well, Tim, I want to appreciate you for coming on the show. If you want to let everyone know about Draper Associates, I know you alluded to it right there, but if people want to reach out to you, learn more about what you do, please let them know where they can go and what they can expect to find.
Okay, my email address I've just posted, tim@draper.vc. And so if you're an investor or you have a business plan for me, send it to me. Otherwise, don't send me spam or whatever. Don't send me like promotions for your consulting organization. Just business plans or investment. Those are the things that are interesting to us. So thank you. Hey, great. Thanks for having me on your show, Kenneth.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you. And we look forward to doing this again in the near future.
Terrific. Great.